James, round 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sound didn't quite turn out exactly how I wanted it to the first time round.
Well, we were sharing one microphone.
We were, and this time I've just spent the last hour setting this up so we can go through this again. We're not going to cover the same ground that we did last time because we've only got about 45 minutes, but
thereabouts, yeah.
Just for the benefit for the thousands of views that this is going to get.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're both doing the same access course, which is a diploma that will hopefully allow us to go to the university of our choice next year.
Absolutely.
We're doing psychology, chemistry, biology,
human physiology,
and lovely mathematics.
Gross.
Can't get enough. And we're how many weeks in? About 10 weeks, 12 weeks? No,
Yeah.
Something around that. We started in September.
September the 9th.
On the 19th.
So we're on
the 9th.
So we must have been on the 2-month mark.
Yeah.
Over.
And we've just come back from half term.
Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So just, time flies. Time flies.
Honestly, like I'm looking at the calendar thinking, fuck, like where's it gone?
Well, we touched on, we sort of went into what we both want to be doing in the future, which we kind of share the same interest, which is why I think that we're doing this podcast. But you're from your dad's a psychologist, comes from a background in psychology.
Yep.
You're a little bit unsure as to exactly what field of psychology you want to go into, but I think you said that you're kind of finding your way. You know, the more
like I'm happy
you're starting to refine.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of I feel like that's what this is for, really. You know, because I think anybody going into psychology with a very clear concept of what they want to do with it is fucking genius. Like, I don't think anybody going into it, because you're getting so much information that will change your worldview. If you haven't really got cemented one already.
Yeah, if you'd have asked me a year ago what I wanted to do, it would have been...
Spaceman.
It all started off as psychology, so I wanted to understand human behaviour. Then it kind of went to neuropsychology, because I knew I was interested in the brain. Then that just became pure neuroscience. Now it's turned into neurogenetics.
I mean,
it's kind of in the set, but...
Yeah, because they all feed off one another. You can't have psychology without the brain, and you can't have the brain without genes. It all just feeds off one another.
You've just summed up my entire future in very few words. But saying that, we're not necessarily going to be unpacking psychology per se.
Oh,
we could. I mean, I would definitely be interested in having a behaviorism versus psychodynamic debate, just for the sake of debate's sake. But that's not really what these podcasts are for. It's just that when we have our little 15-minute breaks, 20-minute breaks in between lessons, we're outside talking about free will, morality, religion, politics.
Basically, the stuff we should be saving for in here, but we don't.
Basically, yeah, well, I can't help myself.
No.
It's impossible. But I said, James, we got to meet up. We got to do this again. Let's get the sound quality right, because that's the most important thing. And just a couple of topics that I wanted to pick your brains about.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's start with this one, the deplatforming. So the reason why I want to talk about this is because I'm hoping to go to Royal Holloway next year to do biomedical science.
Nice.
But I do follow quite a lot of their Twitter accounts. So there's the psychology, there's the biomed side of things. I think there is also geology and many other accounts. But one of them was the Royal Holloway Students' Union, which I followed, I can't remember how long ago. But then I noticed that there was a post the other week. I might even flash it up on the screen so you can see. It was asking existing members of the union how they felt about deplatforming. So as soon as I see the word deplatforming and it being associated with the university I hope to go to, obviously my ears pricked up and I looked into it a little bit more. And from what I can tell, I believe that Katie Hopkins, the controversial ex-LBC presenter, was she the winner of Apprentice? I'm not sure, but
I don't care.
That's when she first came into this world and infiltrated people's lives. And I'm not a fan of Katie Hopkins in any sense of the word. She certainly hasn't got her T's crossed and I's dotted over mental health. You know, I've got many issues I'd like to pick her apart on. And that's maybe the point, is I would like the opportunity to pick apart what I believe she says is incorrect. Now, this is where we've had these debates during our breaks where should you deplatform someone for hate speech? My initial response, well, I think the answer boils down to, I don't think it should just be a case of yes or no. Because I may well agree, yes, we shouldn't allow it, but then my definition of hate speech may be completely different to yours. I don't know necessarily whether I want to talk about what Katie Hopkins says is hate speech. I'm sure there is, and I'm sure some of it isn't. It's how do you determine what hate speech is? And what are the pros and cons to allowing someone such as Katie Hopkins from coming to speak and providing them with a platform? And I think also the definition of what a platform is. I think my definition of a platform is maybe slightly different to yours. So, essentially, there's a vote going out. The students, the members of the student union are going to be able to vote on whether they should deplatform people based on maybe group percentage. And I'm not a fan. I know there's a grey area, and I think this is why this is a good opportunity for us to maybe look into it. But my question to you, James, should we deplatform people for hate speech?
To be contrary, yes.
That's it. Right, the next thing to discuss. Right, and in a way, I'm glad that you disagree with me. I don't think that we're completely polar in our opinions, but go.
I mean, yeah, for simplicity's sake, I will disagree because I think...
Not for the sake of this podcast, you really believe...
Sure. So, if we were to look at it in several ways, defining hate speech and defining a platform. Platform should, say, Katie Hopkins, we'll use her as just a universal example.
While you talk, I'm just going to check to see whether you're...
picking up.
Go on, keep going.
Okay. So for example, if she was going to go do a lecture, I think she should continue to do that, which wouldn't be deplatforming, because that creates an environment in which those concepts can be challenged in an intellectual way. Mm-hmm. Her Twitter account, on the other hand, let's get rid of it, because that doesn't encourage an environment in which people can... Twitter is not a good place for people to debate, as you well know.
Well, I agree and disagree with you, because I think that if I'd have set up a Twitter account maybe 5 years ago, I probably would have been banned. Not because I wanted to say things that are racist or anti-Semitic or anything along those lines. I think I would have just wanted to insult people or belittle people.
Sure.
No, or would I? I don't know. But what I'm saying is now that when I do get involved in, I don't want to call it confrontations, but where my idea meets somebody else's and there's a difference. I mean, I try to be as rational and as polite as possible. Yes, there's undertones of sarcasm in there sometimes when I'm clearly speaking to somebody that this isn't going anywhere, and they start to attack my number of followers, which is I'm proud of the number 42. Of followers. Shh, be quiet. I could have lied. I'm not on there I'm not on there so people can read what I'm on there because I'm interested in what other people have got to say.
But it doesn't work when you're limited to 150 characters. Yes, you could do a follow-up tweet, but
that's a very good point.
But that shit doesn't work. You can't get a complex thought such as hate speech across in 150 characters.
Descartes did it. Incogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
Shut up.
Okay, but they didn't have Twitter in 1625 or whenever it was.
But you can't debate, and then it's not a debate wherein, say, if we were going to go back to a lecture format where you've got one person, maybe a couple of others who have counter arguments, sit in the middle, whatever. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's say 3-4 people debating one issue, and then a lecture room full of other people who can put in their opinions.
I think it's interesting
Whereas with Twitter, it's a stream of content. You can't closely and concisely watch it and measure it.
It's hard to follow sometimes because your comments are going to other people, and you can't.
Yeah, and suddenly you're just...
The Twitter thread is somewhat convoluted.
It is, and it just becomes a stream of nonsense and just verbal diarrhea, no matter which side you're on, because it's not cohesive. It doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. That's why Twitter is a terrible platform for debating these kind of things, which is why in the context of hate speech, Katie Hopkins should be removed, from my opinion, like absolutely subjectively.
From
Twitter, because it's a platform in which doesn't allow the challenging of her beliefs, which then creates an environment in which they're reinforced, essentially, because she's allowed to put them out into the world to exist without being challenged or
I'm going to play
destroyed.
devil's advocate now.
Sure.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. So this isn't necessarily my opinion. I just, when someone has an idea, be it my idea or your idea, challenge it, try and break it.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody out there who doesn't say anything that's racially non-inclusive, everything that they say is radical left, and they just have nothing but good things to say about everybody.
Okay.
But they decide to discredit, say, somebody like Katie Hopkins or Donald Trump or Nigel Farage. You can start moving towards the centre, and they're just saying things that are twisted. You think, you've misquoted somebody there. Should they be allowed to have a platform? I mean, they're not saying anything that's racial.
No, because with Katie Hopkins, because that's the definition. What this extreme leftist person is doing isn't hate speech. They're just spewing misinformation, whatever.
But who's to say that hate speech is worse than discrediting somebody's name? If somebody's out there now online making things up about me, putting me in a bad light, misquoting me, misrepresenting me, I would probably be more annoyed than that than if they were to take the mick out of my size, my race, my height, my sexuality, whatever. I'd be more affected because my characteristics I'm proud of, and I wouldn't necessarily want them dragging that through the mud. But certainly if somebody was to misquote me and misrepresent me, I believe, and it hasn't happened to me because I'm not famous yet, I think that would probably upset me more, having someone just
for my
take
money,
my personality out of context.
You've perhaps unknowingly hit the nail on the head, because all of your features are privilege. Going to go into white privilege, male privilege. Societally, the viewpoint is you're at the top, right? Not saying that's correct, but just the way society is formed, the general consensus would be you have the top privilege because you're a white male, for example, right? Because, you'll, for whatever reasons, get paid more than women in particular jobs. In certain areas, you'll also be picked over other people of other ethnicities.
I'd love to pick your brains on the pay gap debate.
We'll go into that
this is
another time. But in this context, you being more annoyed of someone spewing nonsense about you and discrediting you is indicative of that privilege, because the point of hate speech is that it's against the minorities. I'm assuming you're heterosexual?
Yeah.
So there we go. Because if Katie Hopkins spewed homophobic...
Just because I'm privileged, I would let you speak.
Sure.
Just because I didn't choose to be white,
heterosexual,
born in a middle-class family living in Berkshire, and I didn't choose that.
No, of course not.
Does that mean that I should be more susceptible and less critical of people that may misrepresent me on Twitter, for example? Do you believe in equality?
Yeah, of course. I believe in the concept of equality. Does it exist? Not really.
No, but should there be equality?
100%.
So why should I be any more vulnerable to online discreditation than someone who's black, gay, and of a particular religious minority?
Because you've hit the nail on the head, wherein you wouldn't be fussed if they were discrediting, again, your sexuality, race.
Oh no, I think
But you said that you'd be more annoyed if they were just spreading lies or whatever. And because that's the thing, you don't have to worry about where your racial or sexual or religious standing puts you in society, because you're already at the top.
I mean, to some degree, I don't believe that your race or your religion makes who you are. It's your personality, it's your...
But, no, you're right, but this is coming down to those things as a collective. So in terms of hate speech, for me... Again, this is unfortunately subjective. Like, me, a white man, can say anything about hate speech on, a heterosexual white man can say anything about hate speech on women, the LGBTQ community, other ethnicities, because I don't understand, because I haven't been in that position.
I disagree with you, because if you...
Hang on, because what you've said, and with that, coming back to the hate speech, is that... Katie Hopkins should be, in this scenario, metaphor, analogy, should be deplatformed, because the things she says which would be hurtful to those people in those, let's say, minorities, for example, of the gay community, women, and, you know, just essentially people who don't have the top privilege, it's spewing hate and hurt. That, to me, is the definition of hate speech. So when we go back to your extremist leftist view, they're not advocating the hurting or the hate or, you know, physical harm or disgust towards, you know, Katie Hopkins, Trump, Farage, as you said. They're just saying, they're just basically spreading disinformation or misinterpreting their arguments. And that's not to say they're right, but what they're not doing is putting hate speech out there on a platform which cannot be challenged. Because even though you could respond to Katie Hopkins, say, no, what you said is disgusting about this particular person and these particular peoples, that's horrible. Why would you do that? She's not going to listen. You're not, because there's not that proximity.
I think what you said there is certainly one reason why I would advocate for the non-deplatforming of them at venues such as Royal Holloway. That is maybe the only opportunity that you get. Yeah,
that is exactly my point.
That's what I think.
They shouldn't be deplatformed in lecture, as I'm going to say, lecture environments.
As long as it's not edited out where that debate bit is taken out.
It needs,
because you are then just giving them a platform.
It needs that challenging. Which is why I would say she needs to be off Twitter.
And in fact, almost encourage it more. I think, in a strange way, and I haven't really thought about what I'm going to say in too much detail, but to some degree, encourage more universities to invite people like Katie Hopkins on so that they can challenge her. She may well walk out at the end of it thinking, God, those lot are stupid. They don't understand.
No doubt.
Yet we're all thinking, we'd knocked her down a peg or two because we use statistics and
that's the important thing for me,
analysis.
Is because it's more important that the group collective changes their mind rather than the hurtful individual, because I think to me it's about encouraging critical thinking among the masses. When you don't encourage critical thinking, that's when people just sit back and accept, for example, Katie Hopkins' hate speech on Twitter. When somebody doesn't need to challenge that, then to them that just becomes gospel. Whereas in these formats, that's when...
Well, I suppose if she... Because people, I mean, we're using her as an example, but
sure.
I mean, I probably could think of many other people who may well fall into that category. They might fall in. It might not be in my category of hate speech. It may be in yours, and vice versa.
Sure.
But you picked up, and I've wrote them down here. Is that what's the benefit in giving them a? I don't want to use the word platform because some people think that you're giving them a platform, therefore you're allowing their toxic rhetoric to be communicated around the world. Therefore, they're worried that people are going to listen and be like, oh, I should hate this minority. I should hate them as well. I should also have that opinion. Is because it's going to happen anyway, okay, for one. So there's one point, it's going to happen anyway. So if she doesn't come to Royal Holloway or another university or another wherever, then she's going to be on Twitter. And that's all these people are going to hear. These people who are vulnerable and may be impressionable and may admire her for whatever reason, they may be impressionable to this toxicity that she speaks online. But the 2 points I think is, are you inviting them in because you want to change their mind? Or, in my opinion, what I seem to be more of an advocate of is educating others. What I mean is, there may be someone who's, I don't know whether Katie Hopkins is right or wrong. Do I hate her or do I not? Is what she's saying true? Is it not? I can't work it out. If you bring them in to that environment where you challenge them and you allow them to talk, and then you break it down and you challenge them on them one by one using civilized discourse, people listening in can think, I like the way that they've broken it down. I now understand. If they still walk away thinking, no, Katie Hopkins is right, I'm sorry, but then you have a problem.
Sorry, because we agree, I think I just didn't explain it very well.
Yeah.
What I mean is, doesn't matter if we change Katie Hopkins' mind or not. Don't give a shit. It's as you said, it's about changing the individual masses, people who think, I don't know. Look
at this person's ideas. I mean, taking him out. Who's to say that we're right over hated Katie Hopkins? You know, this.
I mean, I do believe I am right, but there could be a factual case that we're not.
And not everything that she says is wrong. You know, she may have. At one point, I kind of was on board with her over some things. I think because she was an LBC and it was definitely toned down, I started listening to her more often, started following her on Twitter, and I was thinking, this isn't very scientific. This is all gut work, guesswork, and it is. Yeah, it does appear to be hate-ish speech. It's hard. I'd like to actually bring up some examples, maybe next time, but maybe that's for a future vodcast. But I wouldn't prevent her. I'd want to speak to her. I would do anything to be able to have her sat where you're sat right now, so I can challenge her. And so that's another one. I'm going to pop down here. We can come on to that in a minute.
Sure.
So yeah, we're in agreement. I'm not too sure about the whole Twitter thing. A few years ago, I was a massive fan of if anyone talks, giving out misinformation or just garbage information, don't let them. Why allow that to be even just given airtime? And it's the whole challenging bit. I thought,
because this touches on free speech, which is again like a value we need to hold dear. Mm-hmm. But I think, again, controversially, free speech needs to stop when it's advocating the hurt or hate of individuals or groups of people, because it's wrong. Like, we should all love and accept one another.
Utopia, and it isn't going to happen. You're always going to get tribal.
Fuck. It's not going to happen yet. Now.
I don't know whether...
It's not going to happen within our lifetimes.
So I don't want to be pessimistic for the sake of pessimism's sake. Because I've just finished Genome by Matt Ridley. Mm-hmm. Many people will know him for that book and his scientific background. Some people will know him as the guy who became the CEO of Northern Rock Bank and was in command of it when it sank during the recession.
Nice.
So, but leaving that to one side, and also Behave by Robert Sapolsky, another book that I've recently finished, talks about the innate tendency for us to form tribes.
Sure.
That doesn't mean to say it's right. I can't say, well, look, the reason why I hate you implicitly or subconsciously is genetics, and I can prove that with evolutionary theories. I mean, so therefore I'm allowed to hate you. No, and I don't. No,
for me, it's because something I touched on last week and something we talked about earlier, in that the mind as a abstract concept has advanced far more than the physical capabilities of the brain. The brain is still relatively undeveloped enough to keep up with all of these new societal concepts that are coming up, which is why I think mental health exists and why we devolve into these tribal ways.
Because it was valuable at one point. I mean, 10,000 years ago, everybody was a threat.
That's
because
also
they
why
wanted to steal your food or your sheep. But
that's why I also think radicalism exists, because it's that tribal concept of the brain.
Everything's tribal. I think it explains extremes of any.
Yeah, and that's why we form social groups, because we form social groups with people who are similar, who have the similar drives and goals to us.
It's not the same innate tendencies that allow us to form groups. It's when that group is threatened. And I think that once you're in a certain group, you fall into a certain category, that you start to identify other groups as...
enemy.
Yeah, you may not do that consciously, but we certainly do subconsciously. And there's a lot of empirical evidence out there that supports that notion. And I don't think too many people contend that. Obviously, everybody should get on. Yeah. And I think I'd be more inclined to try and educate people as to how to cope with that rather than change that. It will happen. And I say this to a lot of people. You compare society now, compare the world now to 100 years ago, then 500, 1,000, 10,000. It's getting better. Cancer death rates are at all-time lows. You've got education that's free in more countries than ever. You have the choice with regards to occupation. My mum, she said, it was office or factory when she came out of school. I could go on, you know, with regards
100%.
to how racial inequality, with regards to your sexuality and freedom to express your sexuality in public, things are improving. So 100%. We are heading in the right direction.
Yeah, of course.
Is the best way to continue that deplatforming people, or is it bringing them in, giving them I wouldn't say a platform. I want to change it to bring them into a ring.
Because,
you know,
again, I wouldn't say...
Does that make sense?
No, that's exactly what I'm
saying. Proverbial
because
intellectual boxing ring.
So, going back to Katie Hopkins, deplatform her off Twitter, where her speech can't be contextualised and criticised and challenged, but definitely platform her in a lecture setting. Mm-hmm. Because that's where it can be intellectually, critically challenged.
I guess, I'm just throwing ideas out there. Allow her to keep her Twitter profile, but a part of the prerequisite of her attending Royal Holloway to come and be debated or exchange ideas is that she has to publish the video on her Twitter feed or on her YouTube channel.
Undoctored.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. You make it a legal requirement. I like that. So at least then people can pull her up. It'd be good if people just were a bit more transparent. I'd say, I don't know how... she seems fairly transparent, as in she's quite... I don't think she hides her views. She certainly...
the amount she fucking spews them, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, we're in agreement. We think that from a lecture perspective, or invite them into a proper arena with a referee and a crowd. Do you see what I mean?
I'm thinking of a Monty Python bit where debate the theory of whether God exists. They've got like a bishop or somebody from the Vatican and a theologist, and they put them in a boxing ring, and whoever wins, God exists or not.
Are you making this up, or you actually saw it in a movie?
No, that's a Monty Python bit.
Which one?
It's from the sketch. It's from the TV show.
Oh, right. I don't think I've ever really seen them.
If you've got Netflix, watch it.
Really?
Hilarious.
And these are the ones from the 70s?
Yeah, these are their original
60s,
TV sketches. Genius. Yeah. Some of them incredibly outdated and racist, which is clearly context for the time and not okay. But, yeah. So, to be fair, because of that, they're not funny. For me, I watch some of the racist ones, I'm like...
You'd have to show me. I suppose in some ways, when you laugh at certain things, you it's funny, but for a different reason. Not an embarrassed laugh. It's because it's silly. It seems a bit...
I do.
It's hard without actually watching it.
Because you'll laugh because you're like, fuck, they were so wrong. Or so...
I haven't seen any... I don't think I've actually seen anything old. But the last 4 years, I've been buried in academia.
Sure.
And I watch documentaries, and I watch lectures, and I read books, and I do online courses. I come to college. I haven't watched anything old for a while. But it might be...
It's certainly worth it.
You'd have to make some suggestions for me.
I will.
In fact, if any of the tens of thousands of viewers that are going to watch this one are making any recommendations in the comment section below, why am I pointing there? It's just going to be somewhere.
Yeah, it'll be that way.
There. That's another thing that's going on at the moment is obviously people being brought up. I think John Wayne has been exposed for his... misogynistic comments that he was making in around about 1950, something like that.
John Wayne of The War of the Worlds.
John Wayne is in The Cowboy.
No,
in the Cowboy movies.
No, we're thinking of two different people then.
I only know one John Wayne.
Because have you not heard the musical version of War of the Worlds?
No.
Dude, you are missing out.
Really?
Fuck good. Anyway,
musical. I didn't know there was.
Oh, dude, it's
strange.
It's so good.
Okay.
But
H.G. Wells just down the road from me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
so yeah,
people. I'm totally fine with people being called up for previous, inappropriate, offensive views and comments. But I think we shouldn't compare if they have changed.
Oh, absolutely.
We should not tie them down to what they did in the past.
One thing that's lacking in a lot of just going to say society is context, and because reading when I was reading How the Mind Works by Steven Pinker, and in fact a lot of this was brought up. 100% is brought up a lot in Behave by Sapolsky. is context. So different hormones have different effects on different people, depending on the context. So hormones aren't one-dimensional, one-directional, one-task chemical things. They're a lot more interchangeable and malleable based on what's happening in the situation. I think that's one of the problems, is that people don't quite look at the context. When somebody says something, if you were to read, I think Ricky Gervais makes a really good point about this. If you were to read his jokes on a piece of paper, not in an audience, you didn't pay for a ticket, you just read his jokes on a piece of paper, not knowing that was written by a comedian and not knowing that it was meant for an audience at a comedy night, it would come across as though it was some crazy schizophrenic psychopath's manifesto, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but that comes back to
if you get someone to read the same thing out in an audience with people who've paid for a ticket because they know they're going to see a comedian and it's being done by a comedian and it's got the laughter, it's different to if you were to just
absolutely
talk this with a matter of purpose in a school playground.
Because again, that comes back to the outdated sketches in Monty Python. They are outdated in terms of content, but contextually it's all satire. They're poking fun at those horrible things because they're horrible and they know that.
Do you think, hold on a second, you said you didn't find them funny despite the fact that they were poking fun at it?
While I appreciate they were satirising racism and homophobia and misogyny, the way they went about it was, for me now contextually in 2019, was in itself racist. For example, blackface. Several of the actors would dress up in blackface to do caricatures of people of colour, which, racist. But in a way that satirises.
I'm not one of those who thinks it's racist.
Sure.
I think it's context. I think, again, I don't want necessarily anyone watching this to think that I'm the kind of person who wants to go around defending people because I don't.
So from that point of view,
I wouldn't necessarily call it racist.
I disagree, but I don't think you're racist, for example. But for me, that is beyond, and again, this is another point where context comes in, is there's not just global and societal, global context, then societal context. There's also interpersonal context and individual context, and it just goes in and in and in and in. Because society may agree with me or you, but I will do you sort of see where I'm coming from? I don't think you're a racist, but I personally don't.
Okay, well, this is my problem. Is I think that there isn't a clear divide between what is and what isn't racist.
Well, you can't. I don't think you can put it as a binary thing. I mean, it would be so much nicer if you could.
Are you a fan of cultural appropriation? Talk to me about. You're not.
It took me ages to get my head around it because, what was it?
Well, in a way, I also know that being black isn't a culture; that's a race. But it still fits within that category. So you're taking somebody else's identity
and trivializing it.
Correct. And is there any scenario where that is allowed? What I mean is there's obviously been complaints where you've had the incidents where people have dressed up as Native Americans. So they put the headband on with feathers coming out and they're going, wah, and they're going to a cowboy and Indian party. Do we cancel all cowboys and Indian parties from now on?
See, because that's too far. Cancelling, but it needs to be about education and enlightenment. You're saying what you're doing is culturally offensive, but you're not going to stop people doing it because that's...
So you're happy with that? So if I invited you to a Cowboy and Indians party, which I'm having on Saturday, I'm not.
Sure.
Maybe I will now. Would you come dressed as a... You probably would feel that there's less cultural appropriation if you was going to dress up as a cowboy because you think, well, cowboys are predominantly white.
Yep.
I'm white, therefore it's okay. But Indians, they're not...
Native Americans.
Yes. But... Yeah,
I'm just being facetious for the sake of it.
Native American. You see where I'm going with this?
No,
because I could keep working our way back until I say, well, he can't go as Batman, just in case you upset the guy who created Batman. But obviously, I'm not in any way, shape, or form putting Batman in the same category as someone of a particular race.
I would come as a cowboy, but I'd also be like, nobody should be dressing up as a Native American because that is...
So no more cowboy and Indian parties, just cowboy parties.
I wouldn't stop it. I would express my personal discomfort, but I wouldn't stop it. And I would point out the offensiveness, but I wouldn't... Again, I'm not going to stop it because it's not about... again, this comes actually to a point I wrote down earlier, which is talking about doing things with civility. Me personally, and I'm totally subject to doing it myself, of seeing someone with really, like, as I was talking about earlier, earlier this year, tweeted at Donald Trump to kill himself. Because I fucking wanted him to. Which is wrong. It's immoral on my part. And so Twitter suspended me. Yeah, they won't suspend so many other people who criticise minor Twitter members anyway. That's something else. It's fine. So they suspended me for a couple of days. It's fine. But, I'm subject to that anger. But it's the only way you're going to... I deeply believe you're going to convert people to a more enlightened and open-minded and welcoming viewpoint is with civility and kindness. Because for me, it's... If you instead had a really hostile view to, say, Native Americans, for example, because that's what we're talking about, I wouldn't attack you for it, because you will immediately get your defense up and feel threatened in that tribal manner. But if I came to you with an olive branch and as a friend and tried to and it certainly wouldn't be in a one sitting, but to change your mind, I think over time you would.
That's the thing. I also have these... If we want everybody to be equal, then should skin colour ever be a barrier? Should it ever be something that we need to even think about? What I'm saying is, if we all want to be treated the same, like if I said to you, this Saturday I have a French-themed party, would you be happy to come with a black and white? I mean, that could be even taking the mickey, because the French might say, we don't even wear black and white striped T-shirts with berries with onions round our necks. We wear the same clothes as you, except that, bear in mind, this is cultural appropriation, right? So we're talking about cultures. We're not talking about sexuality. Okay. We're not talking about race.
In this regard...
this is where I'll say, why is it okay for a white person to culturally appropriate another white person, if you believe that, but not okay for it to be someone who's black, brown, whatever?
Because, okay... So
and I'm kind of on... I can hear the arguments from both sides, and I can't say that I would be able to put all my poker chips on one and say, right, that's...
I'm with you in the sense that I do hear the arguments from both sides, but I would more than comfortably put all my chips on the side of, it's fine to do it to other white people, because they have... I mean, say with the French as this example, they've never been subjected to, for example, people coming in, stealing their land, ignoring 2 world wars.
You need to do a little bit more history, my friend.
Not in the same way recently as Native Americans have. Or, for example, in Tibet with China coming in and etc. Or, just so many cultural minorities have just been wiped out, extinct, or severely reduced by white man. Whereas if we just put a striped shirt on, garlic around the neck and beret.
I guess I could try and sit there all day long and meditate and try and put myself in that situation. And you couldn't. I couldn't put myself in your situation and try and gauge what your experience was on your first day at college, because I'm not you. You're a different bunch of atoms to what I am. But I suppose, and again, I'm asking you these questions because I'm just challenging and trying to break your idea.
You need to.
Is, how would you feel, and be honest, how would you feel if an undercover reporter or just a really good travel journalist was in Pakistan and they went to a village on the outskirts of wherever, it doesn't matter where it is, and they actually realised that about a quarter of the country do English-themed fancy dress parties where they white their faces up, they wear, I don't know, what would an English person wear? Whatever, tweed jacket and brown leather shoes maybe, I don't know.
Like bowler hats.
And they go around with cups of tea and crumpets, like plastic ones, because the fancy dress shops around there, they
sell
all English memorabilia, they wave the English flag, they wave the English flag, and they white their faces up or whatever, and they dye their hair blonde, just say that, and they were just going around going, oh, crumpet, crumpet, crumpet. So they were really appropriating our culture.
I suppose that laugh there is my reaction. It's funny for me because,
We got a good relationship with the Pakistanis and the Indians. We fought together in the war.
Because
I'm not saying that, not to say that we haven't done anything incredibly. I mean, the United Kingdom, the British Empire, have got a rusty and shady past.
Fuck yes.
But I don't have any responsibility or culpability. I'm not responsible for that. I was born in 1983. I don't even think I was born just after the invasion of Falklands. You know, I don't have that much in terms of what we've done in terms of military, except the Gulf Wars and in Iraq, which I was not a fan of, I'm not a fan of invasions. I don't think it's
not cool.
No,
But going back to your point.
So yeah, you've just walked in. You've just gone to Pakistan and says, "So you got to come and see these English-themed parties. You got to tell me what you think." So you wouldn't be offended?
No, because for me, I have nothing to be offended for. Give me a second, because I'm still formulating.
It's still your culture, still what you identify as.
But my culture has never ever been under threat from anything.
So could I not offend you now, because there's never been any history of me, my family, the Crisp family, attacking your family, Sewart. That's it. How do you pronounce your surname?
That was it.
It's Sewart. Right.
Spot on.
Fine. There's been no history of that. Therefore, because for that reason, I can claim that I can culturally appropriate your family, or family appropriate you, if you like.
Sure.
Because there's no history of me attacking your family.
Yeah, I've never been subjugated. I've never been demeaned for my culture and family culture in this case, right? Whereas the people we're talking about, Native Americans or in Pakistan, for example, they have.
Okay.
And that's where it comes from. They've been subjugated and demeaned for who they are. That's when it becomes important to point out cultural appropriation. Whereas in France, or when, I always love it when Americans do British accents and take the mick. Could you argue that's cultural appropriation? No, because it's fucking funny.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there's probably, so I understand where you're coming from now. You know, I can see how an Australian doing a British themed party and vice versa, and South Africa. I mean, actually, there's a grey area just off the top of my head.
Sure.
Maybe there's definitely some history there, but you wouldn't have any problems with us doing American themed.
No, we do, because I mean, like for example, where I used to work.
Well, we do all sorts. We do we do other cultures that you would disagree with. We do everything here. Fancy dress parties are so in the UK. I don't know how big it is in other countries.
So topically around Halloween. You know, in Spanish cultures, they have the Day of the Dead.
Yes, they do.
And so that was one I saw around Halloween, where some people were against people getting into it for cultural appropriation reasons, but others were like, no. Who, again, it's Twitter, so I have to trust that they're of Spanish and Mexican heritage and all of that. That they were like, no, it's great to see other people not dehumanize. That's not the word. Demean our culture. They're embracing it, and you know, that to me would be slightly different. If it's a positive embracing of somebody else's culture, that to me is a good thing.
Well, I guess in some way...
in the context of cultural appropriation is when you demean and ridicule someone else's cultural differences. That's when it's wrong.
Okay. How do you know if it is ridiculing?
You ask the other person of that culture.
Sorry?
You ask the other person of that culture.
Yeah, but what if I could possibly find some Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Pakistani, Indian, Moroccan people that would say, I'm actually quite offended that you're not doing that anymore. There will be some people out there who say, I love it. My friends brown up, black up, and we do a joke, we do a curry, everything's all Indian themed, and we dress up and we do everything. We go over the top and we stereotype a little bit and we put on funny accents. We have a really funny time. Our friends love it, and the next morning, you know, we're sort of nursing a hangover and we all just carry on. I guess what we're trying to answer other people's opinions. I don't actually know. When you hear about this, again, it usually seems to be another white person criticising a white person for appropriating somebody's culture.
But then here it is.
It's very rare that you hear the Indian, the Pakistani, the African.
But then here it is two white people trying to protect other people's cultures.
There's one white person who wants to appropriate a brown person, another white person saying to the other white person, you shouldn't be doing it. What does that person, the culture, the race...
Here we are, you and me, two white men trying to define the opinions of other cultures, which we're not a part of, which is ridiculous.
Okay, well, this might be a good place to end. Bear in mind, you're limited on time.
About 5 minutes.
I have this question. So, I did write this down. No, I didn't. But I memorised it, which is good. I hear this. So someone says to a man, "You're not a woman. What gives you the right to comment on whether women should be able to have an abortion or not?" Okay, so let me continue.
Sure.
So I think, well, yeah, the man hasn't got a womb. He doesn't have to give birth and everything else. And I think, you hear that a lot. You hear white people being told, what right do you have to be able to explain what is or what isn't right or best for blacks, Asians, whatever, and vice versa. You get this, you cannot possibly understand what it's like for X, or you cannot possibly know what is best for someone or a culture, a race, or a sexuality or not. And I think, okay, I understand what you're saying, but what if you had cancer, but your doctor was a female and she was lesbian and she was a Muslim? Okay. So she doesn't identify with you. Sorry, to use gay and Muslim there, so I don't mean to offend you. I'm trying to be as opposite to you. She's not a man, so therefore, what does she know about your male cancer? She's a goddamn cancer expert. Like, what I'm saying is, if a man's giving a feedback, and I do understand both sides of the story, and I don't necessarily want to put myself in either one of those categories. I'm quite happy sitting on the fence about this at the moment. Is why do you have to be that person? Why do you have to be that culture to have any positive influence on it? To be able to understand it to some degree. Because I think, well, how can someone who's straight have any idea have any understanding of what it's like for a trans person, or what it's like for? How can a conservative understand someone in his labour? Well, you get that with medical experts. You get female experts.
You've said it though.
In cancer that treat men. What does she know about men?
Because in this case, in the medical case, she's an expert. In the case of cultures and other opinions, it's about learning and understanding. It's about, so typical white guy who doesn't for whatever reason learn about or embrace other cultures. He shouldn't get a voice in the matter because he doesn't understand. It depends what the
subject is. I think, for argument's sake, I as soon as you said that, I thought I'd better sort of explain this.
Sure.
If they're talking about the benefits of immigration and migration within the continent of Africa, mm-hmm. So you might have a social psychologist or a evolutionary biologist talking about the pros and cons of different African cultures working in one another's country. So they're mm-hmm. experts on that subject. They've researched it. They've got the history. They've got the degrees, the PhDs, the lecturers, professors, whatever. But they're not black.
Mm-hmm.
Should they be commenting on that?
I think they should.
And vice versa.
I think they should be allowed to, because from my interpretation of your explanation, those people would be embracing in that culture. They would be observing and learning whether
depends what they say. They could easily those white professors, white experts could clearly say some very controversial things, which they might not even be able to back up with information. Therefore, it could be defined as hate speech.
Then I would disprove them. Yeah. I would disqualify them. Mm-hmm. But for me, if you're...
You see where I'm getting at?
Yeah. But for me, if you're actively engaging, or even or by being put into a culture or other such, mm-hmm. and so passively taking it in, but not being a part of it, you're still... beginning to empathise from their point of view and see perhaps where they're coming from. I mean, like, for me, what bothers me is when you have, like, British expats who go to Spain, for example, and create Little Englands and don't want to get involved. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I say exactly the same thing. I've been over there. I mean, I worked over there for 6 months, not in 2018, so last year. I was over there for about 5 or 6 months. And... I didn't need to learn the language because I wasn't planning on moving there. I'm not going to spend 4 years learning Spanish just to do a bit of... Well, I could have done, certainly, if I'd have stuck with that career and maybe made more of an effort before I decided that brains were more my thing. I completely agree with you.
Because it bothers me when, like, you go to a foreign country, and know you're going, but don't try and take any steps to sort of learn the language, and you eat in, English-friendly places. You don't try and embrace the culture. It's like... What's the point? Why?
Well,
it's those people who don't choose to not actively engage or don't put themselves in a position to passively engage with the culture. They shouldn't really.
This is another good question then, I guess. What counts as cultural appropriation? Should we eat Chinese food? Again, I'm just trying to break a theory.
Because we're not or at least for
we're copying someone's national dish. But why is that different to dressing up?
It's the same as what I was talking about with Halloween. So
we're not mocking their dinner as we're eating it.
We're embracing it. We're saying this is fucking great. We love this. This is good. We're embracing it.
Give me that MSG.
Yeah, it's good. I think we should probably call it time on that point. Saying, go get some Chinese food because it's really good.
Definitely. Chinese food, Indian food, Moroccan food, all food.
The best, even though it's Japanese, the best beef teriyaki I ever had was in Switzerland.
Beef teriyaki.
So good.
Yeah. Mate, hopefully this is actually recorded. I haven't seen behind the camera there, but we'll...
It's been good.
Yeah, well, I think we said we're going to cover 4 subjects. I think we did one.
We probably did.
Although cultural appropriation and deplatforming, but have you learnt anything?
No.
Neither have I.
No, but like that's why we do this.
No,
you know?
I'm taking the piss.
No, I was like, because it's just, again, as opposed to an echo chamber where you just spew ideas out and they come back to you.
Well, we didn't spend the last, I'm guessing, an hour. We didn't spend the last hour agreeing with each other on everything, do we? No. I think we're...
But like, that's why we do it, to challenge, there's no point having a mental construct of something if you don't challenge it. Because like science, unless you challenge a theory, how do you know it's true?
I wasn't born with my beliefs. My current beliefs, if you were to give me a 1,000-question questionnaire, would give you different answers to what they would have been a year ago, and 100%. They would be very different to what would have happened a year before then. I'm constantly... My understanding of the world is malleable, and I think that's good. I wouldn't be coming to college, would I really? But not just from a scientific perspective, but I mean from a political perspective, and from sociology, that sort of thing. I'm just fascinated to learn, and I am trying my hardest to not be controversial. Well, no, because I will be controversial to someone out there, because I will hold
no doubt
a completely different belief to them. But if I say something that somebody thinks that what you just said there is wicked, or you really are incorrect in what you just said, please come and talk to me and explain to me why. I mean, I am open. I mean, some people say, well, no, you won't. No, you. But I'm completely down. I mean, I think I'm polite enough.
But I think people need to be. And again, it's about getting somebody with opposite views or controversial views and getting them into a safe environment where you can, as I said earlier, with civility, hopefully deconstruct those barriers.
Well, Farnborough University College, my friend. This is where it's all happening.
Da-da-da.
Yeah.
This is it.
I mean, sorry, this is my private, the Overactive Brain studio in Kensington, London.
You wouldn't get me in London. I have Next time, I'll tell you about my worst experience in London and my only experience.
If that's not a hook for another podcast, right? I don't know what is.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Jimmy.
Always good. We'll need to organise the next one.
Let's do it.
Whatever.